Hello and welcome everyone to Coach Connect Live. Thank you so much for being here. I am loving seeing everyone letting us know where they're tuning in from across the country and the world. My name is Eloïse Eonnet and I'm the director of Coach Connect here at the Muse and Fairygodboss. And I'm thrilled to be joined today by Elena Pastore. Thank you so much for being here, Elena.
Thank you for having me, Eloise. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, same. So to give everyone a little bit of context before we jump in today, what is Coach Connect? Coach Connect is the place you can come to at the Muse and at Fairygodboss to find a career coach to work with in whatever step you're trying to take in your career, whether you are in your current position and looking to grow within it. If you're thinking about a career shift, if you are in a career change, you can come and find a coach on our platform to help you strategize, take those next steps with confidence, and thrive within your career. And every month I'm joined here by one of our wonderful coaches, like Elena, to discuss a topic that is relevant to you in your career. And today we're talking about a really important topic, which is how to negotiate your total work package. These are conversations that coaches like Elena have every day with their clients. How do you actually set yourself up for success and navigate those kinds of conversations while feeling really connected and clear on what you need and ultimately get what you want when you are joining a new company? So before diving into how, Elena, you really guide your clients through these kinds of conversations, I'd love to give you a chance to introduce yourself to our audience today so they can get a little sense of who you are and how you work, and then we'll dive in. So would you tell us a little bit about you?
Of course. Hi, everybody. My name is Elena, like Eloise mentioned. I currently live in St. Pete, Florida, which is outside of Tampa. I see quite a few of you here in the comment section are coming from Florida and even my area, which is super cool. So hello from not too far away. And I'm a leadership and career coach. I specialize in career transition. So that would be anybody that's looking to make a career change or take their career to the next step. Specifically, a big one is going from doing more of the doing, the tactics, to stepping into leadership. So I work with people at all levels of their career and at all stages. Career transition is just my specialty there. My approach, I would say, is I like to be comforting and warm while also being direct and telling you straight up what you need to do, what you need to work on, and giving you a nice little push. So that's my approach. I love to incorporate psychology into it as well. And also I love Clifton Strengths, if any of you have taken that. And that also is helpful for knowing how to negotiate to bring us full circle back into the discussion. So that's a bit about me.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Elena. That's great. Yeah. Let's jump in. So when a client comes to you and you've been working with them perhaps on their resume, their job search strategy, their interview skills, and then they have that conversation, right? They get the offer, they get that they're sent the information around what the offer looks like. How do you guide them? What would you say to a client to help them prepare for this kind of conversation successfully?
Yeah. So just like anything else in life, the best way to prepare is to be very proactive. So before you're even getting any offers, and it could be even at the beginning of your job search while you're kind of in that research phase of figuring out what's out there and what do you want. And the key is you want to make a list of criteria of things that you're looking for in a job that you want either that offer to entail or that you want to have or live or experience in that new role. So too often, and I think many of us can relate to this in other areas of life, you say that you have these high standards for yourself, you know what you want, and then you're offered a shiny object. And that shiny object becomes so enticing. And sometimes you take the shiny object, even if you know deep down you shouldn't. And so the importance of being proactive is because when you are not in the emotional state wrapped up in the excitement of getting an offer, you can very logically and rationally create this list of what you want and measure it up like a rubric to the offer so that you can objectively say, does this really match up to what I want? Or does it just sound great because I'm wrapped up in the excitement and the emotions of the offer itself?
I love that analogy. I feel like we've all been in that situation, whether it's with a job offer or not, right?
Right.
We kind of see something that's given to us and we say, well, it's great for all these reasons. Let's go, without actually checking in with yourself. So, what you're saying here, Elena, is don't wait, right? Don't wait until you get the offer to actually take that time to address what you want. And I'm curious, when you make that list, like how do you guide people to make it? Like, what should be on that list? What are the categories, let's say, maybe to help guide people?
Yeah. So the number one thing that everybody thinks of when they get a job offer is the salary. The
Yeah,
salary is just
yeah.
one piece of the pie. Even within the compensation bucket, salary is just one piece. A lot of jobs come with bonuses. If you're in sales, obviously commission, which obviously all my salespeople, I hope, are already thinking about that on top of the salary. A relocation package, cost of living adjustment, if that's applicable to you. Of course, the benefits, the 401k, HSA, any of those other types of things. So we want to think about, what am I getting paid? Not just as in what my salary is, but what is the overall compensation package? And then also thinking about the ways in which, and you can do this ahead of time also, if they're not going to offer me the salary I want, what would I need to get financially
Mhm,
for this to make sense for me? Maybe I would
mhm,
ask for a signing bonus, right? I've had clients before where they didn't quite get the salary they were asking, but then they were able to get the difference made up in the form of a bonus. So also just
mhm,
being really creative about the financial aspect of it. So that's number one. Then you want to think about the work environment. And this isn't something that's going to be in the offer, but it's something that you're just going to be assessing throughout the interview process, right? A lot of people say, I want work-life balance. Well, work-life balance to me versus work-life balance to you, Eloise, versus work-life balance to anybody else could look vastly different. So you need to
yeah.
sit down and say, what does that look like? Do I have kids? Does that look like being able to pick up my kids from school every day? Does that look like being able to have flexible mornings or flexible evenings? So thinking about, what do I want in the environment? Work-life balance, opportunities to grow, my manager relationship, my team relationship, any culture related things, company things to do with the company culture, writing those down. And let me see if there's anything else. I guess you would say how you want to operate or work within that environment, which could fit under the second bucket, but to say, um, what are the expectations around the workplace? How can I show up? How can I lean into my strengths? Am I able to be innovative? So I guess you could put that stuff under the second bucket. But really, you're negotiating more than just kind of the standard things. PTO, of
Mhm,
course, sick time, all of those things incorporated in I would put in the first financial bucket as well. But yeah, you really want to be
mhm.
thinking about the whole experience and not just the money.
Yeah, what I love about this is that it's almost like, by creating that full package of what you need and what your family needs, right? Specific things around healthcare, for example, right? Or
Mhm.
flexibility. You're establishing your baseline, and then all of those pieces, kind of, because they all work together, they're like bargaining chips, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
if they can't give you everything that you need in your base salary, for example, well, can you then say, okay, I hear you, everyone that's on the other side of the table, but I'm going to need these things. And they could be financial, but they could also not be financial, right? It could be more like that flexibility, to go to pick up your child, right? So I think what I'm hearing is, it's not, first of all, it's not just the financial piece. It's also
Mhm.
those other pieces that we don't think of as leverage to getting
Mhm.
what we need, right? If someone
Mhm.
can't give us the dollar amount, then perhaps they can be flexible elsewhere. And that's helping you get to that fuller package that you really need to thrive within that organization,
Mhm. Yeah, something that
right?
clients will say all the time is, "I'm willing to take a pay cut if I can find something that will allow me to do blank."
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
people are already starting to think this way, but then it's like, "Okay, well, let's break down what are those exact pieces that, like, to your point, Eloise, make up that picture of that
Mhm,
whole package." Because people
mhm.
oftentimes will say, "Well, I'm willing to give up this vague, ambiguous thing in exchange for this money thing." But you need to sit down and really get tangible about it so that you know how to, like you said, bargaining chip. So you know how to negotiate for it, and you know
Yeah.
how to make it a key piece in that conversation with the employer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to get to my next question is going to be about how you actually step into that conversation, right? A few tips and tricks there. But the last thing that comes to mind here is this list that's made when you are, again, going back to what you were saying before, not emotional, not pulled into the whole thing of like, if I don't take it now, they're going to rescind the offer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is to also understand where your limits are, right? What is actually the least amount of money that you are willing to take in your life to lead the lifestyle that you want to lead, but also that you really truly feel valued at, right? Because if you take an offer that's underneath that, maybe you just won't feel right within this organization, right? So it's also figuring out what are those, like, what is that walk away point for any of these pieces, right? To give you that clarity and that strength going into those conversations.
Yeah, I actually just was a guest lecturer at an entrepreneurship class yesterday, and this topic came up a bit. And I had a student ask, how do you handle responding on an application when the employer asks what you want the salary to be? And essentially, what I said was, it's very easy to tie your self-worth, especially when you don't have a reference point or a range of what to go for. But even still, when there's that reference range, salary range, excuse me, we can say, oh, well, I want the higher end, but it's something about the self-assessment when they turn around and ask you, what do you want? That, and the professors of the class said as well in their employment experience, women specifically always say lower, that people in general say lower than they would expect to pay them. But even women specifically request less than men.
Interesting. Those benchmarks are good to keep in mind. Yeah. Yeah. We have a bunch of questions coming into the chat, and I want to get to those, but any kind of high level guidance that you might give someone when they're actually going into that conversation, once they've made that list, once they have that baseline, once they've remembered that people tend to give a smaller number than organizations expect to hear, right? All of that. Once they've done that and they're going to go into that Zoom call with the employer to discuss, how should they equip themselves to be successful?
Yeah. So doing these lists, like I mentioned, is what you want, right? So then you have to say, what do they want and why should they give me what I want? So you also need to have your evidence points. So again, back to the thing about the salary range, right? Let's say the range is 100K to 120, just to keep it simple. Let's say they offer you 110 and you kind of look at the job description. You're like, I feel like I have most of what they're asking. So I think because of my qualifications and what they're asking for, I can push the limit. I can ask for 115, 118. Why?
Yeah.
People will just oftentimes say, do you think you can do 115? Do you think you can do 118? They don't necessarily have a reason for asking other than the proximity to the offer is relatively small. So they can afford another couple thousand, right? So what I teach clients is to say, if you have very tangible pieces of evidence as to why they should pay you this, not just because you're asking for it, then we can go somewhere and it's going to be much harder for them to say no. So for example, I had a client, we were having this conversation about a month ago, and his piece of evidence that he was working on compiling was related to ways in which he saved the company money as a result of different process improvement routes.
Yeah.
So one was negotiating lower cost of materials. One was standardizing materials across different locations. I forget what the third one was, but we were able to come up with the numbers, and he saved, it was 153K. I don't remember if it was annually or biannually or whatever, but regardless if it was annually or biannually or quarterly, 153K is more than the salary he wants to make. He wants to make, let's say, like 125. So if you can say, hey, I want, using the example I gave, you're giving me 110. I see the upper range is 120. I believe I will provide 120K amount of value because I've provided 150K amount of value in X time span. So you will be making money by paying me more.
I love it. You're hired.
That's what you need, whether you're advocating for salary or whether you're advocating for those more experiential things like the work-life balance. You want to just position yourself to be a candidate that is low risk, high certainty. I've done this before. I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it better because now I've learned more and I'm a more valuable asset. Then they're going to say, hell yeah, we'll pay you the 120. So
of course,
you got to have those tangible points.
So what you're saying, Elena, is not only have those lists, but really give it some strategic thought, right? There has to be clarity on how each of these things that you want, you can back up the value that you're going to create for this organization, so that when you bring them to the table, they have much less ease being like, yeah, no, we can't do that, right? Yeah, nice, nice.
And as far as how, when you said how, email, phone, were you referring to that as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah. How is this done by? Do you write this? Do you get on a phone call? What do you suggest is most successful here for people?
I would say it depends on how far off your ask is from what they're offering you. If you want kind of a lot more things, I would say email them and ask to call, a phone call.
Yeah.
If it's, they're offering you 98K and you want 100K, I would say, could you do this in the form of a signing bonus for the other 2K? That an email for that is fine. So you also want to think about how is the delivery going to be best of your request? And obviously things can be far more misconstrued over email as opposed to speaking. Yeah. And you can also work through any objections they may have or follow-up questions. If they're like, where'd you pull this 153K number from? I want to know where you got that, how you got that, which I don't think they would do, but it could offer more of a discussion, especially to find that middle ground and more of that bargaining need be. The other thing is, if you do the phone call, you want to immediately ask them to email you what was just agreed upon on the phone. So it's written in case somebody else is part of the processing and says, oh no, it says your salary is this, even though you talk on the phone. So you want to make sure you always get that written follow-up.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's great. Yeah. We have so many questions coming in, Elena. There's one that's really kind of specific to this time, which I think would be really interesting to start with. Savannah asks, can you please touch on the unique challenges facing us in this hyper-competitive job market and our ability to negotiate as effectively as when it's less competitive? She says, I've found that the roles I'm even being considered for as either at my same level or lower than what I would have expected a few years ago. What's your insight here?
I think what I just talked about answered a lot of that.
Yeah.
And what I'll also say is what you're sharing, Savannah, is what I see with most clients. And Eloise, I'm sure you do as well. Most of the time people are applying for equal or lesser, and applying for the lesser is hurting you. You think it's a good strategy because, oh, of course they would want me. I'm so qualified that I'm overqualified. But that's actually a problem because they're going to think you want to be paid more. Higher turnover because you're going to be too good for the role. It's not going to make sense for you to stay in that role. Just a number of different things as to why a recruiter would not want to place somebody in a role they're overqualified for.
Yeah.
What I tell everybody at this point in time is networking is your best bet. When I had clients 3 years ago, writing them a great resume, giving them these skills, and just cold applying would be more than enough. But now cold applying is just not cutting it. You really got to be networking, going to social events in your area, just utilizing your network with people you already know or people you don't know in order to get your foot in the door that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a different world out there, but I think that's great, right? Great advice. And yes, we have to always adapt to the environment that we're in. And I think that another thing, Elena, and I don't know what you're thinking of this, but it's not because it's a hard environment that you should not advocate for yourself and for what you need in a job offer, right? Like that cannot scare us away.
Right. They want you. They chose you. So they should want to do what you need to feel comfortable accepting the role. Plus, nobody is doing what I shared about the calculations and the evidence. Nobody's doing that. So if you can do that, and practice that skill that's going to serve you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even for promotions internally.
I was going to say, you can use those exact same techniques and approaches internally as you grow, which brings me to Priscilla's question. And we've covered this, but maybe you can reiterate a little bit and add to this, Elena. She asks, beyond salary, what are key elements we should be negotiating to ensure long-term career progression, right? So if we really want to grow within an organization, or we want to be able to take those next steps beyond that role, is there anything in particular that you think you should negotiate, and maybe not, right, within these conversations?
Yeah, I know. Hi, Priscilla. Thanks for tuning in. Priscilla was a client. Lovely to see. So I would say just think about that long game of what you want. A lot of times I think people are too willing to sacrifice what they want right now or what they might want down the road just to get the offer right now. What you need to remember is, again, regardless of if it's a promotion, but especially a new company, new organization, is you're setting a new baseline. Every time you step into a new role or you get a promotion, you're setting a new baseline for yourself that now the rest of your career is going to be built on. Mm-hmm. It becomes hard internally to establish a new baseline, right? That's why people leave companies every 2 years to get a new job, is because they can get a 20% salary increase that they're not going to get internally. So when you're going through the effort to reestablish yourself, think about, what might I be willing to compromise on now that I would not be willing to compromise on in the future? And make sure that you're being honest with yourself today about, am I getting myself into a sticky situation that maybe won't be sticky now, but it'll be sticky in a year or two? Mm-hmm. And just have communication with your boss on, setting up whatever the situation is, again, financially or environmentally, so that if you can take a step from that, back from that now, that you can reintroduce whatever that is in the future.
That's great. Yeah. Nice. Kara asks a question. She says, I think referring back to when we were talking about women asking for less, women may say less, but she asks, should we be stating a number at all if they ask in advance what we want for salary, right? And I'm going to add to that question, sometimes in a negotiation, during the interview process, the employer will say, well, what's your preferred salary, right? Like they'll ask point blank during the interview process. What's your recommendation there of how to navigate those moments?
Yeah, there's a lot of different approaches that can all be effective, again, depending on your specific situation. I would say that you definitely need to have a number or a range in mind for yourself, and then you choose when to not share that based on the stage you're at and if you feel it's appropriate at that point in time. You need to at least have it for yourself. The benefits of a range is that if there's a job that you would truly take if it was on the lower end, you're not going to disqualify yourself if your lower range is their higher range. So it leaves more room for flexibility depending on what the employer is willing and has budgeted for. The downside, obviously, is they can say, well, you said you'd be willing to take as little as blank, so we're going to pay you that because you basically told us you'd be fine with it. The way to combat that at the end of the negotiation, at the end of the interview process, if they do try that, is to say, well, after learning more about the company through this interview process, I actually do feel the lowest I'd be willing to accept for this role is blank. The range I gave you initially was before I entered the process. Now that I'm more educated, I'm going to change my answer to that. That's the easiest thing you can say. The benefits of having a solid number are you can show the company you've done your research, you know exactly what you want, and you're able to narrow that down exact. But then, of course, the con of that is if they're quite far away, they may just not even give you the time of day from the get-go because they're going to say, well, this person doesn't want this salary.
Yeah.
Do your research, look on Glassdoor, look on the other sites that give you an insight. Even ask AI, honestly, what would be an equitable salary for this type of job with my experience? Even looking, if you can, if it's a big organization, at what they pay in states that require for a salary to be posted. So I know New York and Colorado are two. I know there's more, but see if you can get that and then adjust for cost of living in your state. So those are some ways that you can take the research coupled with your preferences and to create either a range or one fixed rate, depending on what makes most sense for you.
Yeah. And I might add to that, Elena, I don't know what you think of this, but this is an
Yeah,
idea that
yeah,
comes to mind, right? When they ask you that number, maybe you can even say, I look at salary beyond the numbers. I look at the full package. And
yeah.
because of that, there's a range here of that number if you want that number. But I'll have to factor in all these other things that I'll learn in the process, right? So that
I love
you're kind of saying, guys, like it's not just about the number here, but sure, I'll give you a range. I'll play your game, right? Yeah.
I think that's perfect. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Cool. I think we have time for a few more questions.
Yeah.
Natasha asks, if you're pregnant, do you still have all of this room to negotiate, or should the topic not be brought up until the offer letter is signed?
I can share. I'm not totally qualified to answer this question, but I'm happy to share my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it's illegal for them to ask about any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
My gut reaction is you are just as qualified or just as deserving as anybody
Mm-hmm.
else, and that should not hinder or prohibit your negotiating power. And they legally can't, treat you differently because of that. I would still, my recommendation, if you were my client, would be to not disclose and just to carry on as usual. And then when you need to tell them, you tell them.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
if you
second
have any.
everything you just said, Elena. Yeah. Yeah. And again, going back to something that you said before, they're not hiring you for the next 9 months,
Right.
right? They're hiring you for like the next few years. And yes, like people might need to take leave, whether it's for a pregnancy, whether it's for time off, whether it's for travel, right? People can take time off in their careers, right? And so really think beyond the child and beyond the pregnancy is my recommendation, and negotiate for that person coming back to the workforce. That's who you should be negotiating for. And yes, like bring it up when it feels right to bring it up. If you feel like you're hiding something, find a way to make it work naturally. But negotiate for that person, not thinking, oh, but I'm going to inconvenience them. Yeah, many people
Right.
will for many different reasons, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice. I think we can squeeze in one last question. We're not going to get to everyone's questions today, and I apologize. There are just so many here. I think this is a question that many people might be thinking, and I see a variety of different forms of this question. But Christina asks, what is the order in which you should negotiate parts of your offer? Salary, bonus, PTO, time in office, etc., all at once, or is that coming in too hot?
In one conversation, definitely, because you don't want to keep coming back and say, actually this, because then you're going to be like a needy child that just is never satisfied, right? So in one sitting is the answer. Within
Yeah.
that one sitting, I would say start with what's most important to you. And you can even tell them that. I took a negotiation class in grad school, and it was one of the best classes I ever took. It's okay to say, hey, or in the email before the call, or if it's multiple things, right? I would definitely recommend a call or Zoom. In the email, you would tell them that there's a few things. Don't list them off in the email, but say, there are a few things about this offer I would like to discuss. And then at the start of the call or the Zoom, say, okay, thank you for the offer. There's this, and this that I would like to discuss today. I would like to go in order of importance to me. Does that work for you? Yes. Okay, great. Salary is first. Let's discuss that and kind of go from there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't want
I
to
love what you just.
Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
You don't want to start with the least important first, because they're going to have the most energy and engagement in the beginning. And especially if you have a lot of things, they're going to, maybe lose engagement and lose energy. And so you definitely don't want to wait till the end for the last. You want to wait till the end for the things that don't matter as much.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love what you just did too there, Elena, is that you're getting them on board every step of the way. You're checking in with them. You're saying, does that work for you? And having them say yes, even to just the structure of the conversation, sets this really nice tone of, we're in this together and we're just in conversation here, right? So that's a really good trick. Take that with you, everyone, because that's gold right there as far as how to manage that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. We are unfortunately at the end of today's webinar. Elena, thank you so much for all the wealth of knowledge that you've shared. You gave people a really strong sense of how they should prepare, the things they should be thinking about, empowering themselves with that knowledge and that clarity about themselves, and then how to bring it into that actual negotiation piece. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Check out Elena on the Muse and Fairygodboss. You can find her profile there. You can book some time with her to dive into more into negotiation, to dive into your job search strategy, to look at your resume, all sorts of things that she helps clients with. She's a total rock star, as you have seen today. This is just scratching the surface of the knowledge and the care that she gives and shares as a coach. So check her out. We're also going to be sharing a promo code that you can use for a discount to work with her. So grab that in the chat. It'll be emailed to you as well to book some time with Elena. Elena, again, thank you so much. See you soon. And everyone, see you next month. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for your questions, everybody. Thank you, Eloise.